This is School of Rock by Amanda Garner and Christina de Leon. This is some background information of School of Rock. The movie was released in 2003. The director of this movie was Richard Linklater. It was also written by Mike White. The main character in this movie is Jack Black playing as Dewey Finn. The film won an MTV Movie Award for Best Comedy Performance. On the bottom left, you see a little poster of the School of Rock, what the DVD would look like, and in the middle bottom is the director of this movie. So I wasn't able to provide a movie trailer of School of Rock due to computer problems, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about it myself. The movie starts off with Dewey Finn, also known as Jack Black, playing at a concert and decided to do a crowd drive. And didn't work out. He fell to the ground. So the next morning he woke up ready to go for band practice to practice for the competition Battle of the Bands audition. So he shows up and there's another team member there which he was not aware of. And before you know it, the band ended up kicking him out of his own band, which he did create. He brought the whole group together, but they still kicked him out anyways. So he was all devastated, staying in, not doing anything. His roommates, they have jobs. So one morning they asked for rent. He didn't have the rent. They told him to get a job. So as soon as they took off to go to their jobs, he got a phone call looking for one of his roommates, known as Ned Schneebly, who is a substitute teacher. They were at a school called Horace Green Prep School was looking for a substitute teacher due to one of the teachers that left. So he pretends to be Ned Sheebley and shows up to the school with thinking he knows what he's doing and whatnot. So he shows up. And so the first day goes horrible because he has no idea what he's doing as a teacher because he's never been one. So he technically does nothing while the students are explaining like what their teacher does and all that. But no. So the next day it was music class, one period. So they came and took the students to music class. So he was roaming around. He goes by the class and he hears and sees the kids, the way they're playing instruments, the guitar, the xylophone, the piano, some of them singing and all that. So the first thing came to mind was, oh, I'm going to create a band to compete in Battle of the Bands. But he left out the students, letting them know that they were going to real competition, so he had them thinking it was a school project. So instead of teaching them math and writing and English and all the main subjects you're supposed to be teaching, he decides to just teach them pure music. He gives them CDs. He ends up splitting the kids into groups, to singers, to guitar, to bass, to drums, to piano, to the lights, to coming up with any managers and all and whatnot. So this, at the end, they find out who he really is during parent night. The kids grew attached to him. So before the Battle of the Band concert, he goes ahead and takes the kids, and they go and compete. They didn't win, but due to him and the connection of the kids was inseparable bond. They grew together not because of a teacher-student relationship, because of who they are. He accepted them for them, and they accepted it for him. They went around him and whatnot, but overall, this movie was a really good movie. It did teach a lot. After this class, you go ahead and it opens your mind a lot and see things you did not see before. So, hope you like the rest of this presentation. The plot. This movie takes place at a school named Horace Green Prep School. It's mainly for, as you'll see in the movie, a bunch of rich families. Dewey Finn pretends to be Mr. Schneebly, a substitute teacher, and takes the job. By doing that, he gets a phone call looking for his roommate, but instead he pretends to be him and decides asking all these questions about how much to get paid, when they get paid. So instead of telling Mr. Schneebly, the actual person, he decides to pretend to be him and go ahead and take the job. Dewey Finn used to be in a band, so after hearing the students playing in music class, he decides to create a band. He just so happens to walk by, and as soon as he saw the kids playing instruments like the drums, the guitar, the xylophone, and all that. He decided to create his own band. He teaches the children of rock and roll to compete and battle the bands. He does this in a secrecy so no one will find out what they're actually doing and lie and pretend this is a school project. Policy and public school law. Policies are rules that are seen as setting limits and specifying the procedures that are to be used. The teacher is supposed to teach the students basic knowledge such as math, reading, writing, science, English, literature, but instead in the movie, instead of teaching these subjects, he decides to go off and teach them just mainly about music that is not one of the top common core subjects. One of the policies for substitute teachers is that they can't host any field trips. One time he decides to sneak out the students for an audition without permission, without anybody knowing. The second time, the students snuck out of the school and went to go pick them up, and they went to go play at Battle of the Bands. The prep school in this movie needs to follow a dress code, but at one of the scenes, one of the students gets in trouble because he's dressing all punkish in his uniform.
Student-teacher relationship. The teacher and the students build a tight relationship with each other throughout the movie. The principal introduces Mr. S to some teachers during lunch, and he tries to fit in with lies. Therefore, he doesn't make a full honest connection with the teachers. He gets the students to keep their band a secret. At the end of the movie, before the battle of the band, the entire class shows up to Dewey's house to get him to compete with them after being exposed of who he really is. The relationship is so close that he decides to hold rock and roll classes, which they participate, so they see each other out of school. School community relationship. Mr. S takes the principal out for a little lunch date which no other teacher has ever done. The small lunch brought the principal closer with Mr. S because he asked about a field trip and she actually reconsidered letting it happen. At the audition for Battle of the Bands, the judges knew the way Mr. S was and didn't want anything to do with him, so he doesn't have such a strong bond with people outside of school. The parents of the students in Mr. S, Dewey Finn, are not a big fond of him either because all their mind revolves around is music instead of focusing on the main subject. Student opportunities. The students did have a choice throughout the entire movie. One of them was going to the principal right away and exposing him that he wasn't teaching the proper curriculum. The students chose to ditch school, pick up Dewey, and go to compete in the Battle of the Bands. I think one of the biggest important decisions they decoded to do was gain knowledge in music rather than the main subject. Point of views. I believe that others would have different perspectives towards this film, but in a more positive way. The students were able to make their own decisions instead of having them made for them. A negative point of view would have been the student/teacher relationship, whereas the students were over his house and playing in a band with a grown man. Overall, this film has a lot to teach to future and present teachers on how they can interact with their students in a different way of learning. So the quote of the movie, "No, you're not hardcore unless you live hardcore," and the legend of the rat was way hardcore.